All right. Well, it looks like there's some room to improve. So this is exciting. Thanks everybody for filling that out. I'm going to leave this screen open like that, Jill. Can they still see that stuff? Makes it easier. Okay. So quick overview of what we're going to discuss today. This is going to be way more active, interactive. And so if you have your computer, and many of you do, fantastic. Please get it out. We're going to mess around a little bit. The goal is to begin with a connection to workshop 1. I'll just kind of start there. So the reason why in March we had the computer science folks come is because I felt like it was really, really important for those of and those are the folks who are in attendance to understand a little bit of the technical components that are happening behind the scenes when it comes to artificial intelligence, as well as to really understand the different areas of artificial intelligence. And the reason why is we're beginning to see things like legislation coming out that are trying to govern AI. But when you read some of those documents and you really try to understand what our legislature in particular is trying to do, their understanding of AI is not great. And so, for example, one of the recent bills that was introduced to our state legislature, which has since been kind of revoked and cut up, just talks about general governing of AI without really ever explaining the different approaches of AI, which means that had that passed as an institution of higher education, but at any other university, would have had to have been transparent about all of their AI use, meaning that whatever platform that we have that's doing machine learning, which is something that EAB's Navigate does automatically and has for a long, long time, or that our Workday system or that Banner does, that machine learning is AI, and that's already built into that. What we are really talking about over the last 18 months is generative AI, and we'll really discuss that. But when we use generative AI, and we talk about tools like ChatGPT or Copilot, those are resources that include a lot of the different categories of AI that had previously been separated. So when using ChatGPT, you have machine learning. It can go through, it can evaluate data, it can look at historical data and provide analytical outcomes. There is natural language processing, which means that when you interact with it, it sounds like a human being or responds to you in human-like language. There is deep learning, because all of the different combinations of words and numbers that exist in the training data that is built upon that model requires deep learning to go in and figure out what's the best combination of this stuff to make it make sense when I spit out an answer. Okay, so that's the reason why we did that. And also, I think it's important for us to understand as we start playing with these tools, this right now is operating very much like the early days of the commercial internet. And I want to use that as an example because during the early days of the commercial internet, and Sean's really old, so he'll probably remember this, there was a massive kind of debate, argument, land grab for web browsers. Do we remember that? There used to be all kinds of different web browsers. And what ended up winning was Internet Explorer. Google eventually got into the game. And even now, we don't have that many web browsers that are out there. We're beginning to see that. With AI models. So, for example, OpenAI has their model that it appears Microsoft is trying to make a play to actually purchase the whole thing. Google's doing their own stuff. Meta is doing their own stuff, which is interesting. And I was talking to a friend this morning that said, no matter what, I'll never trust Meta. And I thought that's probably a safe bet, right? So be careful with using what they're doing. But the point being here, I want you to have enough of the critical awareness and expertise to be able to bounce back and forth across these different models and these tools based on what you need. So for example, thinking about how Firefox is going to do something different for you than Google Chrome will. Those they function differently, and they're really going, your choice is going to depend upon what you need it for. And so I envision a future relatively soon in which our AI models operate in the same kind of way, specifically our generative AI models. We're going to get into, the bulk of this will be examples of generative AI use. And I'll talk about what we're going to highlight there. In the last 20 minutes, I'm going to bring in Shane Jackson. So Shane is, I'll do a longer intro, but he's one of our professors who's actually working on a generative AI tool that he's actually trying to get as many people to use as possible. And DPS, the Denver Public School System, is actually using it, and I'll kind of explain what it does, and he will too, but it's pretty rad. Okay, so today we are talking about connections, supports in progress. There's a reason why we're not talking about plagiarism and generative AI detectors at the moment. That is something that the Generative AI Task Force is working on. It's something that the provost and I are working on, is guidance for responsible and ethical use. And so when people raise their hand, they say, are we using this correctly? Please know that that is happening. It just takes time for guidance and even policy to go through the iterations at a university. And so hopefully in the next 2 weeks, our data shop is actually putting together some really clear kind of guidance, a checklist basically for thinking about how we use institutional data using these models. We have some guiding principles that the GATE folks reviewed and put together that are applicable to the entire university. It's basically a checklist that gets us to stop and really think about how are we using this? Is it safe? Is it ethical? This kind of stuff. And then ITS has their own position statement that we'll make available. And so just so you know, this is coming, and the goal is to really have everything in place prior to July 1st, so that way as you prepare for fall classes, you have all of the resources that you need to develop some things like your syllabus policy, or if you're in academic or student affairs division, how are you looking at student data using some of these tools, this kind of stuff. And so just know it's coming, it's just simply slow. And today what we're trying to do is really just play around with these tools, so that way you can see how it might add some value for your day-to-day work. All right, so let's have some fun. All right, so what we have here, or what we're going to do is we're going to spend a good portion of today talking about ChatGPT 3.5 and Copilot. I just want to break this down real briefly. ChatGPT 3.5 and Copilot are basically the same thing. Literally, Copilot is built on top of the algorithm and the infrastructure that is ChatGPT 3.5. And so for the most part, we're going to see the answers should be pretty similar when we plug in a prompt. Once you get into, and then we're going to talk about the Adobe Suite. Okay, we'll bounce back to Adobe Suite. How many of you have used Adobe recently? All right, cool. They have actually integrated their Firefly AI technology across their suite. Does anybody understand why we would encourage the MSU Denver community to be using Adobe? Jeremy, why? It works. Yes. What else? Anybody who's paying attention to what's going on in the AI world? They have been front and center on copyright law. Adobe has been very, very vocal and transparent about their commitment to protecting copyright. And so I am encouraging us as MSU Denver faculty and staff and students to use Adobe as much as possible, because we have access to it, and because many of those safeguards as a portfolio or a suite that has always been attractive to the creatives. Adobe has been very, very good at making sure that what they create is aligned with our constitutional copyright laws. So that's why I really encourage it. And then we'll get into ChatGPT 4, because there's some really cool stuff that you can do with that, but that requires a subscription. Hopefully we can kind of convince the powers that be to see if we can make that available to everybody. But there's just some additional data analysis that you can do, some document reading and interpretation that you can do with that, and I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll end with Copilot Studio. Okay, so Copilot Studio is one of those things that we have access to, and it allows you to create custom chatbots, which is pretty amazing, actually. And Hank, this may address many of the things that you have discussed. It was one of those things that ITS and us in faculty affairs didn't know that we had access to until we went to the site, and then it's there and you can do it. And it allows you to basically build out your own custom chatbot, which is pretty awesome. I'll kind of walk you through the initial steps of that. All right, so give me a second, folks online, folks in person. I got to pull up all the different windows that I have ready here, but we're going to do a side-by-side of the two different tools. All right, so not that one. Let me make sure I have. All right, there's Adobe. Okay. And where's my other one? All right, Copilot. Now, Jill, what's the best way for me to share this split screen? Because I'm gonna have to change it. It looks okay. Oh, so everybody's seeing. Oh, perfect. Okay, awesome. All right, so here's what we're gonna do, because I know there's many of folks from around campus who are from very, very different departments, who do very, very different things. The goal of what we're going to try to do today is to provide as many examples as possible that will showcase how to use ChatGPT or Copilot for marketing communications. Got some questions in there for fundraising and alumni relations, teaching and learning, and general day-to-day office operations type stuff. So the first step, really use of this particular tool that I wanted to investigate was idea generation and brainstorming. Okay, so one of the things that came up, is specific to teaching and learning, is how do I support just general kind of course discussion? So we have, let me make sure I shut this off one sec. Generate 5 discussion questions for my social media marketing class that encourages critical thinking and debate about the ethical implications of a TikTok ban. All right, let's see what happens. Yeah. Yeah. So this case, I was very clear in the prompt that I had asked the chatbot. I knew what I wanted it to generate and include. And in this case, this is not necessarily something I'm going to copy and paste into my syllabus, but I'm trying to think about how to create more engaging discussion topics for my classroom. This is the place that I have gone for that. Okay. Now let's ask a different question. Can't tell why that's not letting me click. Continue. Absolutely. So the prompt is generate 3 in-class activities that effectively illustrate Aristotle's concepts of ethos, pathos, and logos, catering to visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learning styles. What we have talked about too often from an ODI, DEI perspective when it comes to this, and these critiques are very, very relevant, is the systemic inequality that exists within these tools. And I think it does exist because these tools are trained on data that's out there, and our data obviously has that kind of bent. But what is really great about, at least in my experience as an educator, is being able to look to these tools to enrich the student experience by providing questions, in-class activities, discussions that actually can cater to a diverse student body, whether that be socio-politically diverse or those who have some accessibility needs. And so, yes, go ahead. What am I in? I think I'm just in balance. That's the default for me. But you can mess around. You'll get more unique answers for sure. No, thank you. You can literally engage with this. So the question is, do I always have to say generate when I talk to ChatGPT? No, you don't. I have just defaulted to this. Actually, that's a really good point. These are just very basic prompts. And so this summer, if I can get the provost to, if I can convince her, I would like to have a deeper dive into prompt engineering, because there are some really interesting things that you can do by basically saying, act as X, Y, and Z, right? Act as AVP of curriculum. Now engage with me from that position, and let's have a conversation about effective curriculum within a school of engineering, right? So Sean, in that case, right, could go back and forth with that chat, but that chat has set the foundation as I am now operating as somebody in the position of authority when it comes to curriculum. And so all of those answers that are generated are going to come from a perspective as if Sean were actually talking to another AVP of curriculum. You can set it up to do that, which is really fantastic. There's also one more thing I forgot to show everybody. I think there's some concern about sharing data. So I want to show you real quick, everybody online. You can actually shut off the data. Where are you? Data. Improve the model for everyone. So once you log into ChatGPT, Copilot is not going to do this. Copilot exists within our ecosystem. It's kind of a closed system with MSU Denver data. Okay, so what that means is anything that we use is only going to be used to improve our experience of Copilot as MSU Denver. ChatGPT, a little bit different. So if you're concerned about it, you'd have to go to the settings and shut it off or on. Okay, but you can actually not let it retrain itself on whatever you're asking, whatever it produces. So I was messing around. You can do it with 3.5. You should be able to do it now. Somebody showed me that. There again, these things change like every week. There's a whole new feature and a whole new interface to this for sure. But I think you should be able to. And you can all see what I'm using this for, which is obviously not all work stuff. I pay for this $20 out of my own paycheck. It's the best $20 I spend. All right. So we talked enough about. Let's generate another one. We're still looking at brainstorming, everybody. Okay, so in this case, all right, shout out to our history folks. Generate 3 project ideas that allow students to explore different aspects of World War II, battles, home front, social impact, through mediums like essays, presentations, and multimedia projects. In a lot of ways, I messed around with this earlier, this is like a semester-long series of projects that could be done. This was an idea that came from, I don't know how many of you were able to attend the Department of English's workshop they did last week, but this was one of the ideas that Travis suggested, which is, having ChatGPT be your support as you try to tie in your assignments that may normally feel as they are independent and not connected. Is there a way to actually create this kind of semester-long project that allows for students to showcase their expertise and what they're learning in different ways? Just going to ChatGPT to kind of start that conversation could be a good start. All right, what was the last? Oh, okay. Teaching and learning, brainstorming. Okay. We'll bounce back and forth here. Now I want to talk about research, because many of us in here are faculty researchers. Many of us not in the academic affairs side are still doing research and trying to figure out what's out there when I'm trying to solve a problem. So in this case, this is the very, very beginning of what might be some idea generation. Jill, are we recording? Did you hit record? Okay. You're a pro. So in this case, the question is brainstorm 5 research questions exploring the impact of climate change on the Colorado River, considering factors such as temperature rise, water acidification, and habitat loss. Obviously, if I'm a scholar in this space, I have some ideas already, but this is very much a thought partner for me. This would be the function of a ChatGPT for that particular engagement. Okay, so how do I start thinking through these ideas? So when people say, what can this do? It can kind of do whatever you want it to do. And I was thinking about, I kind of use it as a thesis advisor in a lot of ways when I think about using it for my research, bouncing ideas off of it, trying to get some feedback, thinking deeper about things, challenging me, that kind of stuff. And so we're not talking about generating what would be considered plagiarized content. We're talking about using this tool to actually serve as a collaborator as you're thinking through some ideas. Okay, so in this case, this was just brainstorming some research ideas. Let's take it one more step in our research. I think even as academics, we probably struggle with how to generate research questions and hypotheses. In this one, right, generate 3 hypotheses predicting the effect of different exercise regimes on cognitive function in elderly individuals, considering variables such as duration, intensity, and frequency of exercise. So chances are your students are not going to copy and paste this. They might, but you're going to be able to figure it out pretty quick. But this is a really good place to start to get yourself and your students grappling with different ideas. So in a lot of ways, I'm beginning to see this in teaching and learning. This is the kind of stuff you can request your students take care of outside of class, saving that in-class space for the relationship building, the rapport building, the interactions with you as an instructor, as well as between themselves, that really make that scheduled time that much more valuable. And so as you can see, this particular first step is expedited. It's faster when you get a student this resource that says, here, go here and start playing with some ideas. They can come to class more prepared. So now instead of having 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes in which you're asking them to really figure out what their hypothesis is, you can ask them to have done that work prior, allowing for that classroom time to be more rewarding. Now, this is a very, very academic question, and this is something that Dr. Klyer and I used ChatGPT for yesterday, okay? We are doing some research on, let's start there, faculty affairs. Okay, we are just trying to assess what is the purpose of a faculty affairs office at institutions across the country. And because neither one of us have a scholarly background in higher education administration, many of us don't, right? We don't really know where to publish. And so we started here, okay? So in this case, what are the big academic journals? See what it creates. See how similar the lists are. Now the follow-up that Kath asked was, what are the impact factors of these journals? So now I can actually engage with it, right? Try to figure it out. All right, so those are my numbers. Now let's ask an even follow-up. Okay, so which of these works best for our faculty affairs specific research in your believe it or not, we looked at the websites for submission after we did this yesterday, and it was pretty right. Like it was pretty spot on in terms of this would be the best place for you to actually think about putting your research. And so this is the kind of logistical steps that could potentially save you 15 minutes that you would normally spend just searching the internet and going through submission guidelines for these kinds of journals. Question?
Oops. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to make a judgment. Right thing. I'm going to say that I might not.
That's fine.
Well, have you done any, is there any, we understand the potential differences in outcome based on English input or
So from the question was, if your grammar, your punctuation, your spelling isn't sound, will the model know how to answer effectively? Yes, it will. Its answer may not be grammatically sound or match the punctuation that one would desire, but that's why this is not creating content that should not have to be reviewed and analyzed. Okay, but it does seem pretty able to navigate any misspellings and punctuation errors. In fact, I've got a prompt just about student feedback that it's my student feedback, so don't worry, I'm not showing anybody else's, but I just copied and pasted a bulk list of responses to SRIs, the students, and it was able to parse through there even without commas and question marks and all that stuff. So yeah, it's been pretty good at that. Something that you didn't really bring up and made me think is the ability for this to speak different languages. It's pretty amazing, and that's why I really kind of encourage a safe, ethical, responsible use for our students who are not native English speakers or whose language is not whose first language is not English. This is a fantastic way to really get them to grapple with and understand some of the nuances that make our language very complex. So, thank you for bringing that up. Question, Joe. Can I put in student response data for Copilot? I'm trying to think what Buffy Ribble would say. Yes, as long as it's not identifiable information. So when I put in my comments about student ratings of instruction, there is no way for that chatbot to know who said it whatsoever. I'm asking it to do a sentiment analysis, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. You have to be very careful with information that does get tied back to a human being. That could be students, but that could be faculty members too, right? These are the kinds of conversations that are being had in the data shop and in the ITS shop. Is, if we turn on Copilot for all of our Microsoft suite, what do we need to make sure is not being used to train the much larger publicly available model? But just know that every organization is really kind of dealing with that right now and grappling with that, because what you have for just kind of background is to kind of get some inside baseball. So there's some universities, we'll just kind of stick within higher education, who paid a lot of money a year ago to build out custom GPTs for their institutions, right? So it's just this thing that's available to my employees and to my students because they were worried about access and making sure that everybody had access to this stuff, right? That's trained on all of that institution's information. The problem is when you do that, when the technology changes, you either have to go back and pay more to have them update your model, or you just throw it away because it's become obsolete. The good thing about, we probably all have our issues with Microsoft, but the safety that Microsoft allows. As an organization that has cultural trust and has been around for a long time, there's an ease that comes with going with that particular enterprise resource to do one of these things. Because that's another way of saying that there are models that do better things than what ChatGPT 4 can do, but what we have valued as an institution of higher education is privacy and security and all of that. That's why we go that route. I mean, these are the kinds of decisions that organizations have to make. And we're not an organization that is, built on top of a lot of technical expertise whatsoever. And so we have to think about these things when we make these decisions. That's a great question. All right. Now, for our marketing and comms people out there, there's some folks who are doing it at the department level, the college level, university level. The next one is, let's see. I'm actually going to restart the chat just to kind of start it from scratch. Okay, new topic. Create 5 engaging social media post ideas to promote MSU Denver's upcoming alumni event, incorporating elements of nostalgia, community involvement, and alumni achievements. Now, I'm going to pause here and say that ideally I would have followed this prompt up by copy and pasting information from a PDF or a Word document that explained what this event was. And so if you're looking to do that, the more information that you can give it, the better. So that way it's really, really specific. But in this case, it's just a general kind of prompt to get an answer. I got to follow it up with, I need content posts. There we go. How many of you have any understanding of how social media marketing works? So Sean has a little bit. Hashtags matter tremendously, but the change to hashtags, if you're trying to game the system, is it's always changing. And so the cool thing about this is you're going to get hashtags that are relevant, and so they're going to generate the most social media engagement and clicks as possible. It's one of those things that social media people discuss. So in this case, copy and paste, I use it, I take a look at it, I edit it. We'll talk about image generation shortly, but this gives you an idea of how you might leverage the technology to do that. Right, did this not do this? Let me see. I'm going to generate captions. There we go. How different is that? I'm going to have to go back and actually review these. Are they very different? I can't tell from my angle. Are you getting different responses? Somewhat. Say no, 10. I don't know. I love this stuff, right? Bam.
Yes, I'm trying to use this. With an image.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And if you do that, I do it.
No.
The words are.
No, they don't. There aren't real words. Yeah. Correct. So the question was, if I use ChatGPT, or in this case, DALL-E, right, which is OpenAI's version of an image generator, I'm not getting words when I say create this image. It's just not going to, right? At the moment, the technology doesn't have that. The model is unable to do that. We'll get into Adobe. Adobe seems to be a little bit more adept at that. But for the most part, at the moment, these tools, these models are really good at numbers and words, not so much images unless you go to DALL-E. But when you put letters in there, numbers, it's just not good. It's not good. Yeah, it's a very good point. No, you're not doing anything wrong. No, it kind of messes it up. I've learned too in ChatGPT 4, it's very good at data visualizations. And so it's not good at like visualizations, like put a banner on this person who's walking down in the park, but it's really good at data visualizations, the same kind of stuff you do in Excel. And so that can save a tremendous amount of time. I'm actually going to show you how to follow brand standards when it comes to image generation, because Marcom really loves that. And I think that okay, so in that case, that's an example. All right, let's see what this is. Now, that was social media posting. Now let's talk about, this is going to make Dr. Schaefer's brain explode. Let's do a media release. So the question I'd asked for those online is basically to create a press release for a new interdisciplinary major. So something that might go out in the early bird. Ideally, I would have copied and pasted a lot of more information about what that particular degree is in, but what we have now is basically a press release for the announcement of a new major. Now I could kind of, all right, so in this case, this is a general press release. Let me try tweak for sending to students only. Now I'm going to say too cheesy. Make more fun. Make more cool. To get kind of mess around, right? Kind of figure it out. And ideally, what I would have said is create a press release that will go into the Early Bird, which is our university morning newsletter that goes out to faculty, staff, and administrators. This is what they read when they wake up, make it formal, provide all of the information that they need, et cetera, et cetera. So you can set those parameters when you ask the question. We'll talk about how you change tone as well. All right, now here's the really cool one. Oh, one of them, okay. Talk about generating website content. Many of you probably have somebody in your department that manages your website. This is a very, very basic kind of prompt, which is basically, I'll actually read it. Generate compelling website copy for MSU Denver's Department of Computer Sciences homepage, emphasizing key features such as academic programs, faculty expertise, research initiatives, and campus culture to attract prospective students and stakeholders. Provide recommendations on organizing materials as well. Okay. Let's see if we can drill down on one thing here. Let's see. For the faculty info, what are the key points to include? Okay. Now I am working in WordPress. Can you create the code for me to add HTML to the site that would create a section header that says Department of Computer? I spelled it, but let's see. It did, yeah, it fixed it. So this is one example of what you can do. Don't tell UMC this too much, but you can mess around with the code. It's kind of fun. But this gives you an example. So one of the things, let's say that you're trying to embed a table into a WordPress site, right? A table with contact information. So one table is the faculty member's name, one column is name, column B is phone number, column C is email address. The default settings for WordPress kind of condense everything into the middle of it. And sometimes that's not for the best. So you want to kind of actually expand it a little bit. What I've learned is actually going to this and saying, all right, I want to change the parameters of this table beyond, let's say, 150 pixels up to 300, and it will provide the embed code that you would then go, if you go into WordPress, there's the visual and there's the text tab, copy and paste it into the text tab, and it will actually create that change for you that you need. Do we have any questions at the moment as we're kind of going through this? Okay. All right, next stop, let's talk about ITS. There's a few folks that are from ITS. How can we do something cool for that? All right. All right, so in this case, the prompt was generate step-by-step troubleshooting solutions for resolving common Wi-Fi connectivity issues reported by faculty, staff, and students in campus buildings, considering factors such as router settings, device configuration, and network interference. Okay. Obviously, if there are more parameters that the ITS team wanted to include, they would provide that and say, make sure that you follow these parameters. But basically what you have here is the content that you would need to create a step-by-step guide, whether that's in a PDF or on a website that provides some support for those who need it when it comes to Wi-Fi connectivity. Yes, Jill. Mm-hmm.
Accessibility still needs to be considered and implemented properly.
100%. Yes. That's almost, so the question was, can we ensure accessibility, ADA compliance when we create this stuff? 1000%. And actually what I've kind of defaulted to is something to the effect of, now make this content more accessible for all audiences. That's probably not the best example, right? But in the case of the WordPress prompt, you could say something to the effect of, here's what I want to add to the page. Where do I need to put all of the accessibility requirements? The caption in the image, right, or the text to image, that kind of stuff, and it will provide that for you. Again, you just have to ask it, okay, and it'll get you there. Good question. Any other questions? Nope, we're okay. All right, let's see here. Another IT question. So the prompt was generate template responses for common help desk inquiries related to password resets, software installations, and account access requests, ensuring clarity, accuracy, and promptness in customer service. This is obviously a very clear kind of first step, basic ITS support type document. You would potentially add or combine generative AI and natural language processing with some sort of automation tool, right? So one thing that you can do in Copilot Studio is actually create topics. And so what that means is, if a question came that was to the effect of, how do I ensure my course software is accessible to all students? If ITS were to train such a custom GPT, that phrase accessibility would automatically route that Copilot, that chatbot, to an accessibility specific collection of data that would provide the most accurate answer to that user. And so as you can kind of see, these things are pulling from different areas in terms of the content that they have. And if you really want to make sure that the right answers are being provided, then you can actually train and get into you're training the custom GPT to make sure that the answer that you want provided is pulling from the right collection of information and data. Okay. And so Shane's going to talk a little bit about it, but like, if you were to build a custom tutor for a class, right? Let's say Ann Oberman's going to create a custom tutor for a social work class. She knows that one of these questions, let's say about psychological well-being, okay, is going to be a specific collection of information that is only going to be accessed when a student asks a specific question, and can get in there and kind of mess around very easily to make sure that that information only gets accessed when a student asks a question that has this phrase in it. And so she has some say when it comes to this, and we'll talk about what that means. So if you were to get in there and spend the summer or some free time messing around, let's say with a custom chatbot, and you wanted, let's say Hank's teaching something when it comes to math, but he doesn't want students to be able to access information about a really complex question or topic until week 7 or 8, Hank could actually keep that shut off in that and train that bot to say to basically not access that information until a given time, which kind of cool, right? So you could feed everything you want into it and then set these parameters to basically structure and architect the student experience, which is pretty cool. And what has really changed is our ability as non-technical people to do that on our own. Normally you would have to go to a technical person, a developer, to do that for you. But now with Copilot and with GPT-4, you can do that on your own and kind of set these parameters and these rules, which is pretty awesome. Yes, Jill. No. Mm-hmm.
Areas a lot more info. And I think part of this might be like when you do a new topic, versus you just keep going.
Yeah.
How do you guys want how you follow questions?
Yes. So for the most part, when you're on these things, it's going to save your history for that given chat, right? It's going to reference whatever you've said until you hit, new topic, or in ChatGPT 3.5 and 4, clicking that again, then it kind of restarts. You can save these chats in ChatGPT 3.5 and in Copilot, meaning that if you're having a conversation about course development and you're always talking specifically about, let's say, fundamentals of media ethics, you always want to go back to that chat because it's got this history of that engagement in that conversation. So that is one cool thing that I really appreciate now that Copilot has integrated that. You can save that, go back to it, and then continue that conversation. You're not restarting every time. Yeah. And so, these are all of the chats that I've had. A lot of them I'll, get rid of and delete, but there are some, that I'll probably go back to. And, Excel sheet creation is related to a golf league that I run. So I'll always kind of keep that because I know that the chatbot's going to remember the history and know what to do instead of me having to re-enter the prompt. Here's what I need you to do. I can literally just say, go, right? Here you go. I'll kind of show you what I mean here. So basically I'm trying to split up these names for this week's golf tournament. Sorry to bore everybody, but I'm showing you kind of an applicable use, how to split this up into a spreadsheet that I can copy and paste into our scoreboard. But what this means is I don't have to tell it every time to do this. I just copy and paste everything because it remembers, right? So it just keeps doing that. But that's my point. It remembers my initial kind of prompt and what was going on there. Yeah, please ask away. This was meant to be interactive, so.
Maybe with AI, chatbots provide comments there. It's not as it can be done by anyone. Work is done and done well, but no advancement in advancing thinking skills. And concepts. So the value of saving time in the show produced looks great. However, it seems like wandering through the messy stuff should be part of learning and teaching. Can you speak to how this sort of messiness with AI?
That's right. No. So the question is, how do we retain the messiness and the hard stuff when it comes to learning, but also to teaching? And I continue to defer to so much of the pedagogical research that has been out there for a long time, which is we know that the student interaction with their fellow students and the student interaction with their professor is what leads to not just retention, but academic success. It's the relationship stuff. I am not to a point where I really believe that AI is going to ever replace the relationship stuff, the rapport building. And so to answer that question, I want you to think about what can be done to make the messy stuff more rewarding. What can be done ahead of time to figure out what I want to write my paper about that allows for the messy stuff and the grappling things to continue when they get to the classroom or when they're talking to you, right? I think, Andrea's here. I could ask, what are the problems with policing in the United States right now? It's going to say here some of the problems. That doesn't mean that here's a list that's going to make that student's understanding of problems with policing any better, but it gives her and the student a foundation or a starting point that will allow for more enriched conversation. But you need to continue having these conversations. This does not replace anything when it comes to relationality and relationships. And I tend to believe that it actually opens up a lot more of our resources to having this, to doing the stuff that we know sticks. Yes, Andrew.
The integration, right? So it's still like the balance between our traditional pedagogical approaches to teaching in the classroom, but this isn't going away. So what are the integrations of, maybe we put forth, like we tell students, all right, AI generate a list of policing problems in the United States, but then critique it and let's come to class and have those conversations, right? Like there's a lot of ways that we can, but then make sure this implement a way that students are doing an extra step to double check it, because again, it was still AI. And I saw thumbs or somebody's comment, right? Like it was AI plus people.
Yeah, it's true. It's AI plus people. I mean, that's actually a really good example. Andrea's example is, generate this list of policing problems. But what would be the interesting next step is, all right, now come to class with your list and let's discuss the problems of that list, right? Like, what do we know about the information that is being fed into the training model that's creating this list that is in itself problematic? It opens up another conversation. And so, yes, AI plus human. There are a lot of things that it will, it's good at tasks. It's not good at critical thinking. There's concerns about critical thought. There's concern about what it's going to do relate to relationships and all of that stuff. We're a long ways from generative, what's AGI, artificial generative intelligence, right? Is that what it is? The G? We're a long ways from that. I mean, MIT professors think we're like 100 years from it. So I kind of trust them when it comes to this stuff. So we've got a long way to go. And something I was thinking about too is judgment. This AI as it operates now, it doesn't judge answers and responses in the way that a human being can. If I'm a professor of English and my expertise is in, let's say post-World War II fiction, I'm going to have a level of expertise to be able to evaluate how it answers me. And my students will hopefully have that same level of expertise at the end of the class to know what is wrong with that answer or to be able to enrich it, to understand it. And so this is very much, I think about it as like the access to information that may have been harder to access previously. And that in itself can actually make the creative thinking process that much better, in my honest opinion. I mean, as a professor too, I think about the things that we overlook when we're talking about something that we have so much passion about, right? So let's talk, let's say Pam is really focused on teaching some sort of, principle of psychological sciences that I, as a communication studies person, don't understand whatsoever, and that Pam has a classroom of students who may not understand, but she does, and she says, "Here's this complex issue. Help me make my students understand what this is about. Apply recent real-world examples into all of this." It's a way to update not necessarily our expertise, but rather the practical application and usage of our expertise, because this is a relatively up-to-date kind of collection of knowledge and information. Other questions or concerns? Or is everybody okay? Good. Okay. We're kind of done with the IT stuff. Oh, all right. For all of us who love meetings, okay, and Jill Lane, I was thinking about you. I use this a ton for helping meetings. And the reason is, a lot of us are in meetings a lot. A lot of times we're in meetings that don't have a lot of structure to them. And when you don't have structure, people get really annoyed, right? We do. We're nodding our heads. I have actually just kind of defaulted to letting ChatGPT help me outline my meetings, right? So what are the things that we're really not kind of thinking about, right? So in this case, the prompt was, is that what you're going to ask me to do? Okay. Generate an agenda template for a 60-minute department meeting, outlining key topics, action items, and time allocations to ensure efficient and productive meetings among faculty and staff. Now, this is a very general topic, okay? But I'm envisioning, kind of looking at my chairs in here, right? I'm envisioning Anahi saying, I've got a 60-minute department meeting. We need to talk about faculty workload. How do I schedule that meeting? How do I break it down? How do I create an agenda that's going to allow us to have the most productive conversation possible about faculty workload? That is going to allow her to see, what are the questions I need to ask, right? How long do I let faculty talk about this and kind of vent? At what point do we engage and try to think about some outcomes and the do-outs and what do we want next steps? That is something that, unless you are, actively engaged in meeting setting, that we don't always think about as academics. I mean, I'm guilty of it. So this is a good resource to help you kind of outline by thinking backwards about this, right? So what is the goal of that department meeting? Is it to have a recommendation for the dean or the provost on this? Is it to share people's understanding of what this particular topic is? Say something effective. I got a 16-minute meeting. At the end of it, we need X, Y, and Z. Help me build an agenda that gets us there, right? This is very helpful. This is a thought partner in that way. And you can always get in there and mess around and say, no, that's wrong. Right? You can always say, actually, no, go deeper here. I don't want these 5 minutes. I want these 5 minutes. And we'll respond back. So let's say, I don't need an adjournment. But that okay. Cool. All right. So you can I mean, this is not a human being. All right. You can tell it to do more or less. What's the question, Jill?
Students as we scaffold the research process.
Sean, what's that class you're teaching in fall? Okay.
And I just, as a Sean next week problem, and not really this week's Sean.
Yeah.
I got that, but.
Good question. Reach out, email me. Maybe there's a few of us who are going through the same stuff. We can think about this. It's a really good time really to kind of share with each other and figure out what's learning or what's working and what's not. And one of the things that I was going to call upon participants at the end of this is, have you found interesting solutions that you would be willing to do a screen grab and show what you did and how you asked it and share with the campus community? I mean, I think you don't have to, but if we want to create this culture where, let's say, Jeremy's doing something in ODI that Angela thinks could be interesting for her department, it would be good to share that kind of information. We're trying to catch up to it. There's a lot going on. There's a lot that needs to be there, but that's definitely on the kind of front of my mind. All right, so the next one, hi Jessica, is much more kind of administrative management type stuff. So I wanted to plug in this prompt here. I'm going to restart it so we don't mess anything up. All right, so the prompt is generate detailed SOPs for administrative processes related to onboarding new employees, including handling procurement requests, user profiles, security levels, and managing inventory, ensuring consistency and clarity in operations across departments. Now, if I were HR, I would have supplemented this question with a copy and paste of the overview of our onboarding process at the moment, okay? But as you can see, you've got a relatively kind of general understanding. But what I wanted to really drill down, or general recommendation is how would this change if I am onboarding a faculty member? All right, so as you can see, it's kind of added a bunch of academic related stuff. It may not be applicable to MSU Denver because I didn't add enough specific information to really provide that. But as you can see, I think, let's say I'm an HR person and I'm really thinking about what are the differences between a faculty versus a non-faculty person who gets hired here. This is a way to kind of eliminate some of those blind spots that we have when we don't understand what that particular area is doing. Obviously, if you've worked in administration or even been hired at an institution, onboarding for a faculty member is different than it would be for a staff member. And so this might be a tool to really think about what am I overlooking and not seeing. So there's that particular one. All right, this was an idea. Okay, so next prompt is generate a slide deck content for staff training sessions on diversity and inclusion training. Jeremy, don't wince too much. Incorporating engaging visuals and interactive content to enhance learning outcomes, outline the slides, and make recommendations on organization of slides, slide content, etc. And the reason why I added that is because we're using the free version and it can't produce images. Okay, so let's see what it says. It's a starter, right? I'm getting some starter slides, which is basically kind of, it. But if let's say I really want to dive deep into something like inclusive pedagogy, right? Then I could say, good start, right? Now I really drill down on, let's drill down on kind of inclusive workplace relations. Starter, right? Starting helping me understand what are the basics that I need to make sure that I cover. Okay. Let's see, any blind spots? I should.
Just for me. So like in that prompt, you said blind spot, I'm assuming no slang.
Yes, no slang.
Okay.
Yeah, no slang. I didn't see anything about rear view mirrors, so I think we should be okay. Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy, what's your assessment of this? Decent? It's okay. We got an okay. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Now to go back and address the punctuation and grammar stuff. You can use it to do that. I don't trust it. I kind of like to do it on my own, but that's not to say that it's not completely accurate, but it's just one of those things that I'm not there yet. Okay. But in this case, let's see, I said, basically creating a copy editor out of this. Okay. So this was a blog post that I had to create or a discussion post I created for a course that I took, and I just asked it to basically revise it a little bit. Now, that's probably going to make many of you cringe, okay, but you could do it. You could definitely do it, okay. I like to use it not so much for creative writing, but rather the kind of media relations, PR type stuff, the very template-based technical writing. Sorry, John and Chris, if you're on the call. But that kind of template-based, what happened in the sports game type thing. Okay, there's not opinion in there. There's not that journalistic talent necessarily. It's very just kind of bland and dry and this kind of stuff. So it tends to be pretty good for that. Okay, let's see. What is our next one? All right. Now, we've moved on to not so much idea generation and brainstorming, but rather audience analysis and audience awareness. So in this case, for those of you online, I'm copy and pasting what is a explanation of ethos, pathos, and logos that was written for PhD students. There's a kind of very upper level, kind of high level understanding of what ethos, pathos, and logos is, and said, can you translate it for students who have no idea what the hell that means? Okay. As you can see from the outputs, it does not dumb it down. That's not what I'm saying, but it simplifies it in a way that opens the door to a deeper understanding of those particular concepts. And so I can envision a world in which you as a professor, or you as somebody who's working in student affairs, who's dealing with some entry-level students, where you have a very complex idea that you need to simplify. depending upon who that audience is. This is a great tool for adjusting that tone, right? So, I don't understand speech pathology, but, right, I could ask something to the effect of, hey, can you explain this to somebody who has no background whatsoever in speech pathology? And for the most part, it's going to get you an answer that will be able to be understood by somebody who exists outside of that discipline, okay? I've actually been encouraging our faculty to use this when they're writing their narratives, not to write their narrative, but to just check it. If I were somebody who is on a, let's say, College of Liberal Arts, Letters, Arts, and Sciences RTP committee, and I have no understanding of math, would I understand this narrative that is about communication studies? Right? Like that's a really, it's a test, right? Do I understand the value of broad as a math professor, even if I'm not in that discipline? Like that's the kind of stuff that you would normally probably have to go to a colleague and ask, but this resource can help you really think through that as you are kind of making sure that in this case, your narrative is understood by the campus community. Same thing, let's say something from student affairs, like understanding the transfer process. So if you're a department chair, you have a technical understanding of the transfer process that a lay faculty member doesn't. If you are in the transfer office, you understand that process at a deeper level than nobody else. But, if I am let's say, a new provost, and the Office of Transfers or the transfer office wants to help, Laura understand what happens here, that would be, a way for them to really kind of help me explain what goes on in a way that does not involve kind of day-to-day operations or day-to-day overview of kind of transcript evaluation or that kind of stuff, right? So you can kind of take what, let's say in this case, your division, your office is doing and explain it to an outside audience that may not have that day-to-day kind of expertise or experience or whatsoever. Okay. Any questions as we're moving through these, Jill? No, we're good. All right. Yes.
Appropriate citation, elaborate.
Yeah.
And when I ask my students to use it, triggers them to use it, I want them to show me the prompts and show me how they've changed what they've written. But in a professional role, I don't know what to.
I mean, the question was if you're using a tool like this to help you revise some of the stuff that you're creating. I think that it's becoming so commonplace that the negative stigma that would come from saying I leveraged ChatGPT to support me in developing this is ideally going to go away. I just don't know if we're there yet. Okay. So if you're using it to edit, to kind of support the improvement, it's not generating any new content for you. It's not, taking your ideas or anything like that. I think it's okay, but this is not really answering your question. As a faculty member, though, I will say this. If you are using this to create your course content to help you, you should be transparent about it if you're requiring your students to be transparent about it too. I mean, that's, you should say, I use this to help develop my course syllabus. If you're telling your students you can't use this, right? You have to think about this kind of stuff. Be transparent. So at the moment, I think it's much more kind of a resource and a guide, a colleague, than it is creating anything new. But I am anxious to see kind of where things go, 6-12 months down the road in terms of how do we do that? Because you're right, Pam. I think when it comes to academic research, we are getting close to a point where you'll have to say, right, I would use this to help me create my research questions. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, exactly. 100%. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And we'll get there, right? I mean, as a community, we'll get there and really figure out how we want to use it. But yeah, you're right. Oh, they do. Okay. Yeah. Just very clearly, it's great. Sorry, for everybody online, the comment was academic journals that are actually requiring transparency. So is it Angela? What am I trying to say? Am I using it against those who submit, or? how did you use it? I think that's probably where we're going, right? Is how did you get that answer? Right? How did you come to that? And I think the expectation of users of these tools in particular, that seems to be what is driving some of the more recent developments in these models, is they need to be able to explain how they came to that answer, which is, I think that's transparency, right? That actually would be very, very helpful. There's a startup here in Denver called Bast AI that's doing that. It's meant for teaching and learning, and it's, here's the answer. Now tell me how you got to it, because you need to be able to understand that logical structure and that progress. Let's see. All right, so believe it or not, our advancement team has been using generative AI a lot since kind of day one, because I think what it can kind of help when you're looking for donors and this kind of stuff is think about like a marketing profile, right, or a profile of a potential donor that can help them kind of fine tune their pitches. So in this case, generate a pitch or series of pitches to potential donors that highlight the value of small classroom model, MSU Denver, highlighting the value of it's redundant, in a way that can begin to persuade donors to financially support the continuation of this small classroom model, right? So, if I'm working in university advancement, or if I'm a dean or a chair and I'm going out there trying to find some fundraising, how do I actually make this a value add when I'm talking specifically about small classes? So in this case, right, kind of getting you through and helping you with that kind of development. Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's given to you as a list with bullets and stuff underneath it. You can also ask it if it's to be paragraph.
Yeah, it's so Hank kind of pointed out, give me this in paragraph. Yeah, I do that too. Absolutely, yes. So I want to give plenty of time here for Shane to come in, but there's one more major value add that I think, or two more. Okay, for those of us who are lay Excel users, I have really realized the value of these two resources in particular in helping develop formulas for Excel spreadsheets. So, I've got one example here. Let's say, and don't laugh at me too much, mathematicians and statisticians, because it's pretty simple. And and accountants, yes. What this forces you to do, accountancy professor too, and what I've learned is it forces the student, whether it be you or a student, to understand what they're actually trying to get the formula to do, right? Like, what are you trying to get it to do? Well, in this case, right, I just want to combine A and B, right? So how do I do it? Like, this generates the formula, but you still have to be able to ask the question that's where the thought goes, right? What are you trying to do? I will help you get there, but what are you trying to do? This is a kind of extended prompt. So just kind of applicable to different sheets or pivot tables, right? Those of us who have no background in Excel, this is probably useful. Those who do, I'm sorry. But this is the kind of stuff I think that can be useful. The last thing that I wanted to highlight here is sentiment analysis. Okay, so when we think about data analysis, much of our brains go towards analysis of quantitative data, of numbers, right? Which machine learning is very useful for. Deep learning, relatively useful for. But what we're actually trying to do, if you're a qualitative researcher or somebody out there that does interview research, is you're trying to do some sentiment analysis, right? What am I trying to, I need to figure out what are the themes that are coming from the words that people are producing. So what I wanted to try out here was I copy and pasted into this post, or into this prompt, some student responses to me from classes that I was teaching many years ago. Okay, and I wanted to basically, you'll see what I kind of asked it here, right? So the basic question is, review the information below, summarize the findings, and highlight trends, both positive and negative. I plan to use this to improve my teaching, so any recommendations would be appreciative. All right, then I just copied and pasted all of the responses. Let's see where I can take it from here. Casual, low-stress environment, supportive and understanding, clear and thorough, effective communication. I should say, where can I do better? What this would allow me as an instructor to see is to really be able to pull out some threads from a large collection of kind of, student qualitative responses to my teaching. Our numbers don't always tell us much, but this is a chance for you to really encourage your students to provide that qualitative feedback when you're teaching and be able to kind of adjust as needed. One of the things that I was talking about with the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Design, and what they're trying to encourage is kind of mid-semester feedback for students. I mean, in all reality, you could ask students to, answer a 2 or 3 question survey, provide some qualitative feedback on how their experience has been so far, rather than you having to go through and kind of look line by line by line at this feedback, easily kind of copy and paste it in here and say, what are the themes that you're seeing? What is the stuff that I need to focus on? And so that is in itself this kind of potential to kind of improve mid-semester, that kind of teaching and learning. Now, this is just GPT 3.5. If you want to use 4, that's when you can actually upload data sets, right? Massive data sets, and I'll kind of show you one example of how you can do that in a second. Yes, Jill. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Noted. Yes, we'll get that up on the site. Yes, more caffeine. That's a really good point, though. All right, let's move over to Adobe. Let's see. Can they still see the screen? We're good. We're going. Okay, so those of you who are joining outside the MSU Denver universe, I am sorry, you probably don't have access to Adobe. Those of you at MSU Denver, we do. And as I mentioned previously, Adobe has been at the forefront of copyright law, and they're very, very safe, or not safe, but they're concerned with all of this. And so I'm encouraging, folks to use Adobe as much as possible. Well, let's throw out some ideas. Who wants to give me what's the camera angle? What's the camera angle we're going to use? We're going to provide some context. Say close up of what?
Bison running across the plane.
Bison running across. Where are they running, Sean?
The plane.
The plane. The N. Did I spell it right? No, how do you spell plane? There we go. Yeah. Hey, I studied film for a reason, Laura. Yeah, that was. Yes, I know. What other? Okay, we can provide some additional. Integrate. What's this? Our brand colors. Which would be. I'm trying to think. Anybody know what the hex numbers are off the top of their head? I got them somewhere. All right, one sec. Brand. There we go. So let's do brand colors. Which one?
D11.
D11. 242. Is that right? Okay. And let's see. Oh, 4, sorry. So take a sec, I suppose. All right, decent. Let's see. how do I spell aerial? A-I-O-A-E. A-E. There we go. Aerial shot. Now, whoops. All right, there we go. Cool. I guess they're running down a road. Somebody had asked about infographics and like, how do I, create infographics using the Adobe suite? So right now, what I'm showing you is just Adobe's image generator interface. But if you go to Adobe Express, everybody who's online or in person, Adobe Express is actually where you could create some infographics based on the data that you give it. The good thing about Adobe Express, how many of you have used that previously? Okay, so I won't get into the details too much, but what you can actually do is you create the brand standards within Adobe Express. You would create a style and say that, here are the colors, make sure that you match it. Here are the fonts that are acceptable, make sure that you match it. And then once you work within that brand standard infrastructure or that structure, those guidelines, it will produce stuff that matches brand standards. And so, it's a good way for, creating flyers for events and not having to worry about consistently kind of updating those brand standards. But I would encourage you to mess around with this. And so this, believe it or not, what is really cool is I can use ChatGPT to create the prompt that goes into Adobe, right? Because it's really good at understanding exactly how you ask the prompt. And so I might say, hey, ChatGPT, I want a picture of bison that is taken from an airplane and it's in the middle of Colorado in the winter. What would be the ideal prompt that I could plug into Adobe that would produce that picture? Copy and paste, and it goes in there, right? Because this is, I wish some of our art folks were here, and I know they were going to, but what is happening with art is rad. Like, it's really, really cool because they're getting so detailed in terms of the prompt and what they're asking it to do. And so this is really exciting. And once we, at least in my opinion, I think once we get into video creation in the next 12 or 18 months, it's going to be even more awesome, right? Generating video out of the blue that never existed before. Okay, so we've got 4 more minutes here, and I want to just show you what ChatGPT 4 can do. Now, a few qualifiers here, okay? If this is a resource that you are interested in, you can purchase team-specific subscriptions that allow you to basically create allow you access to this kind of increased model just for your team, right? So let's say you have a department and you've got, all of your professors, you want them to have access to this. You could do that. It's relatively cheap. It's like $100 a month. It's not much. I'm not trying to sell something. I feel like I am. This is the best $20 I spend a month. I mean, I save, and I'll show you why that is. Okay. So I'm going to use Dr. Neeson as an example here, right? Being able to really understand kind of what is the provost office responsibility in various board of trustees related things. I could have gone through and looked at the faculty employment handbook and the procedural calendar and the board of trustees notes and all of that. But instead, what I did is I plugged in previous board meeting notes. I plugged in the procedural calendar and the faculty employment handbook. And I just said, right, help me figure out for our new provost, what are the steps that are involved between the provost office and the board of trustees, and when does it happen? Okay, and so I added more than just this. It's just kind of sample prompt, right? But this will then, it's probably going to be out. All right, cool. So what it's doing is it's reading those documents, it's looking for those words, and it's going to summarize, right, all of the steps that the provost is involved in when it comes to, I guess in this case, right, just general faculty related stuff. But you could do it for whatever you need, okay? But otherwise, that would have taken faculty affairs 3 to 4 hours to go through all those documents and really figure it out, okay? So as you can see, I've got a good starting point and kind of go back. And I checked it. It's based on the prompt that I asked, it's pretty good at responding to that. All right, the next one that I think is probably the most powerful is data analysis. Okay, so to give you an idea of what's possible when it comes to this, Dr. Elizabeth Parmalee needed some help figuring out which of our courses at MSU Denver meet the Carnegie classification requirements. So civic engagement. So basically, she could have gone through and looked at all the course titles, tried to figure it out from that, but we needed a more accurate, understanding of what those courses were. And so what we did is she sent me a list of all of the courses at MSU Denver. And I asked her, what are some of the what are we looking for in the course description and the SLOs, the student learning objectives? And she provided a list, look for things like democracy and civic engagement and community engagement and all of this. And I didn't put anything in quotations. I basically just said, okay, look for this kind of stuff. It took me, I probably spent 30 minutes cleaning the data up a little bit. What that means is there's a data set, but I needed to make sure that I had the right titles for each column, right? So that way the bot knew how to read it. And then I provided this script, right? And I kind of explained, here's what it is, okay? This is all this stuff. And then, this, I won't, do this, but basically it was able to, over the course of, I'd say, writing a prompt took me 30 minutes, cleaning the data took 30 minutes, and it produced an accurate list of courses out of the 5,000 were on that list. And there was like 800 courses that meet that parameter, with all of the details that we needed for Elizabeth to use for Carnegie classification. So, course titles, what college it was in, what department it was it part of a major, all of this. And so that's the kind of stuff when we're looking at actual data analysis that I think this tool is really, really useful for, even at the department level, because that saved me a week's worth of work that I did in like 3 hours because it was able to do it for me. And it's really good at unstructured data too. And so as long as you can kind of provide it with enough of that context, you don't necessarily need the kind of data structure that is required for machine learning, where you have tables and all of this stuff. And so I'm willing to really kind of work with you and engage with you in this kind of stuff. If any of you have questions on how to use it, because I'm still messing around with it, I'll post there's a YouTube video that I found last week, and it was really good. And it's 4 hours long, but here's how you use ChatGPT-4 for your data analysis, and it's really, 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 really good. I mean, it's awesome, and I think it would probably be useful for you. I'll send it your way. But this is the kind of stuff, right, and kind of is being able to play around and practice with this stuff is extremely important. Get in there, mess around. It's going to change, in my opinion, the way we work, not by replacing jobs, but it's going to make the tasks that are related to our jobs different. It's going to eliminate some of that stuff. And I really, as I'm a proponent of kind of, critical thought and free thinking. And I do think that it will open up a lot of the stuff that we spend on the monotonous, the boring things. It frees up, especially those of us at an institution and a university that to think. It will free up some of that power for that kind of stuff. So we've got, let's say, 3 or 4 minutes here for some questions, if there are any, and then I'm going to throw it over to Shane, who's going to walk us through sentient AI. So, hey, go ahead.
But you said you paid $20.
Mm-hmm.
4.0. So how much can you upload?
Mm-hmm.
So they say you upload a few PDF files and things like that. And have you ever gone over that 20?
Yeah. So the question is, there's a limit to tokens, what it's called when you use ChatGPT-4, or even I think Gemini. The tokens is basically the little tiny bits of information that the bot or the model can process. It took me a long time to get to that, and I hit the limit when it came to this data analysis, not because there was so much data, but I was forcing it. I was asking the same questions in the wrong ways. And so it was continuing to read the same data over and over again because my prompt wasn't good. So it took practice, and I figured out how to ask the question the most appropriately, and then it was fine. It was quick, but I had to wait like 30 minutes before it re-upped my tokens. And so it does delay it a little bit for sure. And like this thing right here that I just did, it's not immediate. I mean, this took like 5 minutes for the compute power to happen before it spit things out. But that 5 minutes was better than 6 hours, right? So just know that it's not immediate. That's the kind of stuff that increases in compute power will take care of. But for the most part, it takes a little bit of time. And one more kind of example of how to use this is how we might think about it. So if you're using like specific example, so SSC Navigate, right? So many of you chairs in here have access to your faculty's Navigate notes, right? Or your advisors too. I've been messing around to look about sentiment analysis in those notes, because not to penalize faculty or advisors or anything like that, but are there themes that you're seeing in terms of prereq problems, or is it holds on accounts, or are they asking a certain kind of question that going through piece by piece would be really, really tough. So we're doing that with some CLS stuff. I used it, so the Rowdy roadmap, the chatbot, I got the data for all of the questions that were being asked. Like as a chair or as a dean or even anybody across the university, if I know their trends and the kinds of questions that students are asking, that is invaluable information that can actually inform things that need to be changed or improved or added or this kind of stuff. And so I would encourage you to kind of mess around with that kind of stuff. And you can do that without GPT-4. You would just have to copy and paste the information from that Excel spreadsheet into that. And you could do it. It would be okay. And again, as long as it's not identifiable information, you'd be okay. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I think this can be useful for. It helps with decision making in a way that actually has robust data, whether that's quantitative or qualitative, rather than just anecdotal data, right? What's really happening. So I want to pause here, and I think Jill, are you able to share things with Shane Jackson? Shane, if you're on the call, we've got 15 minutes here, and I'll do a quick intro to Shane. Are you able to or not? Yeah, share. Shane, can you unmute your mic real quick?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, for sure. How would you like to do this? You just want to share your screen and kind of walk through it?
Yep. Sounds great.
All right. Let's do it. Okay. So I'm going to join this. Hold on one second, Shane. I've got to